Hello guys, today I wanted to teach you guys about structs. Well, not really. I wanted to trick you into learning object-oriented programming by teaching you structs. So, most people when they hear of OOP, they get really scared. And honestly, I get it. Like, OOP is not fun at all. It is particularly difficult and things like polymorphism are not exactly super intuitive to understand. So some people might struggle with them. And even for me, it took me a really long time to get used to all of the different ideas and thought processes behind object-oriented programming. But here I'll give you a really brief introduction to it, as well as how to implement structs in C++. So, firstly, what exactly is a struct? Well, a struct is like a group of data that can be consolidated into code. You can think of it like an ID card. Everyone has their own one with different variables, but everyone's one has different data inside. So everyone's ID card has date of birth, issued date, etc., your name, your BC number, your gender, all of these different things. But the thing is, inside of each person's card, the details that are printed are different. For example, for mine, my birthday will be somewhere, let's say in November, while someone else's might be in March or in September. And this is the data that will change. However, the blueprint of the card itself doesn't change. Everyone still has the same number of fields. So everyone has these same variables of date of birth, etc., but the data inside them are different for every single person. So a struct is a structure that can be implemented many times, different values. Here's an example. Imagine this diagram over here, which I kind of pulled off Google somewhere. So in this diagram, you have 4 different points on it. And the thing is, each point has a bunch of important data linked to it. Like for the green dot, it has its X position, its Y position, and its color. And the red dot has X, Y, and color, yet again, same for the purple and for the blue. But the thing is, while these have the same variables, like green and red both need their Y, X, and their color, the actual number associated with it is different for both of them. And this applies for blue and purple as well. So while the variables are the same in this case, the actual data is different. So here's how one would go about coding a struct as an example. So over here in this basic C++ program, I have created a struct which is .id, which basically is, you can think of it as kind of a box with all of the different components of each dot that is actually important. And then I create a box for red dot and create a box for green dot. And inside of the box, there are a few small containers, one with the X position, Y position, and the color. And I'm feeding the data into each of these small containers inside of the box for each color. So by doing this, by creating my 2 boxes, one for each dot, and by slowly feeding the data inside, I have effectively found a way to store kind of a blueprint of each kind of dot, which is the struct, and have different data in each of them. Now here, if we look at struct.id, we enter a struct data type to start the struct. This tells the computer we want to make a cool struct. Now, inside of it, we put int X position, int Y position, and string color. All of these are just the 3 different variables that you're going to be dealing with. Usually when you define a function, you don't put a semicolon after the parenthesis, but structs in C++ are quite weird, so you gotta do this as well. So then when you go to int main, so these 2 lines of code are effectively just creating structs for your red dot and your green dot. It is like when people are ordering their ID card. Now, this is just defining the values for the red struct. So this part where you put red dot X position or red dot Y position is effectively like you telling the government what your details are so they can put it on your ID card. And at the end, after you finish all of this, you can do the same for green dot. Now, red dot has an X position and red dot has a Y position in this case. And for those of you who have been exposed to things like Unity, you'd be familiar with the syntax of using dots. This is because engines like Unity record the values of their positions within a struct. Not exactly a struct. Well, they do use a class, but I'll get to that later. So when you're actually accessing a player's X position, you would use player.transform.position.x. And usually this dot thing is very commonly used in object-oriented programming, no matter what language you use. So you should get familiar and comfortable with the notation. So this is commonly used in the making of big apps, and it's quite important to object-oriented programming. Now, here's the thing. You can use private and public methods to store data inside of a struct. The thing is, when you use a private method to store data, which is effectively declaring private and then putting your variable inside, you limit the number of people or the kind of people that can access it. So let's say you are a normal function in int main and you're trying to get data from a private part of a struct. You can't do that. But if it is public, you can in fact do that. So this allows only children of the struct to access the data, or those with permission. So what exactly does private mean in this case? Yeah, so just like I said, if you create a struct and inside of int main you try to access the data inside, you'll get an error because it's declared private. So not anyone can just randomly go and access it. So yeah, the variable is declared private, but you try to access it like an int main. It's like your PS study score. The MOE actually has all of your specific subject grades, but won't tell you what they are. They'll just give you the letter grades, or I guess in today's day, they give you like numbers, I think. So you're not allowed to know it because it's private information. So it's restricted. You can't get it unless you have the rights to. So yes, in C++, structs are public by default and classes are private by default. You can use classes in this case, similarly to how you'd use structs. I prefer using structs because to teach is easier when you try to experiment with public data and public methods as a default, but you can use classes as well. In fact, I would believe that they are more commonly or as commonly used. In C++, the only difference between both of them is that one is private by default and one is public by default, but you can modify within using the public, private, and protected keywords. I hope you've learned something. That was a bit difficult. This is supposed to be a really basic introduction, so I'm not going to get into too much technical detail. Yeah, thanks for joining. Bye.